Welcome back to the show, everyone. We are 10,000 Adventures, a Minnesota based podcast covering everything coming out of the state of hockey, we'll call it today. If you didn't see the news over the weekend, the Minnesota Wild made maybe their biggest trade in team history. Maybe that's a little bit too much to say, but one of their biggest trades they've ever met. So Max will break that down for us. If this is your first time hanging out with us, do us a couple favors. Go over to YouTube, give us a subscribe at 10,000 Adventures Podcast, drop a comment on our latest episode, and then give us a 5-star review and a follow from whatever platform you are listening to. We would greatly appreciate that. And last but not least, you could head over to Instagram if you would like and follow us on Instagram at 10,000 Adventures Podcast. Really appreciate that. That really helps us grow the show and meet a new audience. If there's ever any episodes or topics you'd like us to cover or think we should hit on, send us a message. You can actually send us a text message right in the whatever platform you are listening to. It says send us a message. Click it. Send us a topic. Tell us how our hair looks or what we need to change as we go through this. But let's start there. Let's start with that Wild trade, Max. I don't know if I overshot it. Biggest trade in team history, would you say?
Oh yeah, definitely. Just the number one, this guy we traded for has won the award for best defenseman in the NHL. So that was 2 years ago now, but that tells you right there that he's considered to be in the top. Most people I feel like that have been talking about this trade lately say he's a top two defenseman. He's the second best defenseman. He's in the top three. He's kind of the description. So like just having a player of that caliber, I think, involved, I think definitely makes it the biggest trade in franchise history. We've had big free agent signings. A lot of us remember Parise Suter. That was huge, but this is a trade. This is December, not even halfway through the year. So kind of a out of nowhere trade. I know I listened to quite a few media people for the Wild, and trades are always kind of on the table, but this one just was never like rumored or speculated on. Sometimes you kind of hear things are picking up steam and that kind of thing, but this was never mentioned as like, this is a possibility, or the Wild are in talks, and they're a finalist to acquire this guy via trade. So for all of those reasons, it was kind of shook things up pretty big in the state of hockey. And my first reaction with trades is always like fear of it not working out, like just the downside of it. Like, well, we gave up a lot, which we needed to give up a lot to make it happen, but what happens if all of those players that we gave up that are young, one's a draft pick, first round, one's basically in his first full year, like guys that could pan out to be really, really good players. So like for this summer, anybody that follows the Wild for the last few years, like that's what we've been excited about. We're like these young guys coming up and seeing if they're going to be the next big thing, and now they're gone. The number one that I think most people would argue that have we've been keeping our eyes on is Zeev Buium, defenseman that played in Denver, and like I don't know for other folks, but like for myself, I didn't really get to see him play outside of when he played in his national championships. When Denver was they had won 1 year and then they lost the next year in this championship, Frozen Four. So like seeing those highlights from him, watching him play, just like how much control of the game he had in those games, I was really excited to see that maybe long term with the Wild, and now he's not with us anymore. So it's like that was the first shock for me. But then you sit back and you see how much respect Quinn Hughes has around the league, and he's not your highlight reel kind of guy like Z Buium is, which I think most people would say was our biggest kind of price to pay as a part of the package to get Quinn Hughes. But I think just now that I've had a few days to think about it, I think it made a lot of sense to make that trade. He's a known commodity. It's not every day you can acquire somebody of his caliber. It's quite rare, in fact. And to put basically next year's first rounder, the first rounder we had from 2 years ago, and then a couple first rounders that we had in years prior to that, Marco Rossi being one. I think he was probably drafted in around 2019, and then Liam Ogren. I think he was drafted maybe 2021. So all draft picks within the last like 6 years, first rounders gone. Um, but you look at Quinn Hughes and what he's already accomplished in his career. He's 26 years old, pretty much an annual contender for the best defenseman in the league, puts up a ton of points. Our defense hasn't been scoring a lot this year. And you shouldn't have to necessarily lean on your D to score, but they should be contributing more than they have been if you want to be a serious Stanley Cup contender. So the fact that we're getting a nearly point per game defenseman is really exciting. And now it's up to the rest of our guys, kind of like depth guys, because we're not as deep as we were, to hopefully fill those roles that Marco Rossi left, Zibuian left. Liam Ogren wasn't really a consistent lineup guy for us, but people had hopes. So it should be, I mean, we are definitely a better team, all of that considered. So it should be interesting to see, like, if he can continue to play as well as he has been in recent years, like he was in Vancouver. He doesn't have some kind of shock from being traded, being in a new environment, all of that. Seems like game one, he already scored. Seemed to be just fine. Had a couple shaky plays, but hopefully that doesn't last long, and he's playing at his high level sooner rather than later, because we need to start figuring that out before long, so we can stay in our spot. Because if you look at the standings in the NHL, we're in the Central Division. The best team in the NHL is Colorado. Second best team, I think most people would say, is Dallas. Both of those teams are in our division, so we're third in the division. But depending on the day, we're right around 3, 4, 5, 6th in the NHL in terms of points and playoff, not playoff standings, but points percentage and points. So, like, I think if you look today, we're third in the NHL in points, but we're third in our division. So that's why you have to keep winning at the rate you have. Otherwise, you're going to fall into potentially a wild card spot, and I don't think anybody wants to play Colorado unless they get riddled with injuries. I think right now we have a pretty uphill battle, even with Quinn Hughes, to match up with them for a 7-game series. So I think you want to stay in that 2 or 3, and even with that being said, you're going to have a good team that you got to play and win that first round regardless. So we got to figure that out, figure out how he fits into the lineup. I think most people would say he's going to be our power play guy and number 1 D pair. So who's going to step up and play with him, and kind of figure out how he likes to do things and how he likes to play the puck, and all of those things that just you don't necessarily catch if you are just watching for the entertainment and the highlights, the things that can win you a game when it's almost always like a 1 or 2 goal game in the NHL. So I'm excited. It's everybody's saying we're a Stanley Cup contender now, so it's like now you kind of get those nerves of, can we live up to the hype?
I'm gonna pump the brakes a little bit on the Stanley Cup contender talk
I'm
because
with you. I'm with you.
because I've been a Wild fan since their inception, and we know how things go when we get to the playoffs, so they got to prove it a little bit. I'm actually okay with losing Zeev Buium. I have a couple other concerns, but on the Zeev front, you think about it, his top end potential, the best you could possibly hope that he becomes is what Quinn Hughes currently is in his career, right? Like, we're getting a player who is named the best defenseman in the NHL. So that would be the pinnacle of any defenseman's career for what we're looking for. So I'm actually okay giving up that asset, because a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. Right now, you really got that bird in the hand with Quinn Hughes. So I'm okay on that front on the trade. My 2 concerns are, I'm still scarred from the Parise and Suter contracts. Now we already have Kaprizov as the highest paid player in the league. Well, Quinn's on the trajectory to maybe be the highest paid defenseman in the league when his contract is due. So what are we going to do? Are we going to have the highest paid offensive player and the highest paid defensive player and then try to build around them? Because we went down that path once and we only got out of the first round one time in the playoffs. So I'm a little bit more concerned from the contract perspective. What type of team can we build around these guys? And then obviously Quinn Hughes' contract is up at the end of next season. So I hope we have it at least some sort of handshake understanding that he's going to be willing to re-sign with the Wild because that's a lot to give up for a guy's talents for like a year and a half. So I'm confident that he's going to re-sign with us or at least have a plan for that. What I'm a little nervous about is now that you have the top two paid players at their position, what type of roster can you build around them? But I have full faith in Billy Guerin. He's got big nuts. He's going to go for it. So I'm fully confident he's going to figure it out. Those are my two concerns. Again, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. It's amazing whenever you get the top player at their position and you bring them on the team. So that's freaking awesome. Those are my two just little concerns. But, this year is the Olympics too. February of 26 is going to be the Olympics. It's pretty cool that the Wild have now 3 players that are going to be playing on Team USA in Faber, obviously Quinn Hughes, and then Matt Boldy too should make the team. So we'll have 3 of the players on Team USA are on the Wild. That's pretty fun. And then obviously Kaprizov will be on the Russian team, and we'll have a couple other guys sprinkled on some other country teams as well. But we'll have a pretty good
Russia
representation.
is playing in the Olympics again.
So I was talking to somebody about this at work today. We should look this up. They can't play under the Russian Federation, like they can't play for Team Russia, but they can be in the Olympics under like just the Olympic banner. So they're like the IOC, and you've seen that like in previous Olympics when they do the medal count, it's just the IOC. They can't play for Team Russia. Team Russia's banned from the Olympics, but they can qualify under the individual banners, was my understanding.
Russia will not have a hockey team in the 2026 Winter Olympics.
Will
But
they
I
have
know what
other
you're saying.
athletes?
Yeah, because they had there's been athletes participating in the Olympics under the Athletes of Russia banner or whatever they called it. That's what you were talking about, right? But
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I had heard that they weren't playing. I don't know why. I'm sure it has something to do with that ban. I just don't know why they wouldn't be able to kind of self-organize under that. Whatever it was called, but this coming from a quick search online, that's what I'm getting.
Well, that's lame. That's been Ovi's whole push is like allowing NHL players to play in the Olympics. That's goofy. That's sad,
Yeah,
but outside of that, the Wild will still have a good representation of players at the Olympics,
absolutely.
including the team we're going to be cheering for, the U.S. So that's pretty
Yeah.
fun. Bring Quinn Hughes into the fold for that as well. And like you referenced, he scored in his in his first game with us, so he looks pretty comfortable. With that being said, Zeev Buium had 2 points in his first game with the Canucks too. So hopefully
Well,
both sides win on that one.
I hope so too. Yeah, I mean, nothing against Vancouver, but we have our team here, so we're hoping that not only can he be contributing this year, but for years to come, because we just signed, like you said, Kirill to this massive 8-year contract, so we're in win now mode, and the next 4 years are going to be huge because 4 years from now, Quinn's 30, Krill's 31. 30's kind of that tipping point of oh, you're getting the latter stages of your career, and Boldy's going to need to get paid. Our kind of support cast players are going to be maybe even retired at that point. Crazy to think that, but next few years are big.
Yeah, and I saw the Spit and Chicklets boys talking about the move. Their consensus was we need one more top 6 scorer slash playmaker, and then we're a more legit contender. Um,
I know
but
it's
we
how
also
much do you need, but they have a point.
I mean, like you said, Dallas and Colorado, we're probably gonna have to go through both of them even to make it to the finals. So we're gonna have to do something. Although Dallas has had our number in the playoffs, they bounced us a couple times the last
Never beat them
five
in the
to ten
playoffs.
years. But we've had Colorado's number in the playoffs. We've bounced them maybe the only two times we've played them in the playoffs. So
Totally
um,
different teams, though. I hate looking back at that, but like, yeah, it does cross my mind. It's just, yeah, that was back like Patrick Waugh was the goalie the first time we beat him, and then we haven't won a first round in 10 years, so that last one was probably around 10 years ago, right? Niederreiter in Game 7.
the Wild have very few playoff. How many? I know we've covered it before. How many series have they won in the franchise's history? It's only maybe four or five, and two of them
Okay.
are half of them are against Colorado. If you look at it like that,
Yep. We beat that. Was it '03 the year that we went to the finals? We beat Colorado and Vancouver, then lost the Ducks. There was a year in there where we beat Colorado, and then I'm not sure who we lost to. Probably the Blackhawks. We kept running into the Blackhawks during their juggernaut days. And then I think there was a year we beat the Blues, maybe. That was I think I was in college, but then I think we ran into the Blackhawks again and lost in the second round. So I'm guessing four series wins in 25 years.
two of them, half of them are against Colorado. That's kind of fun. Yeah, they lost to to the Blackhawks in that second round. That was Karamgate. Karamgate, that when the Blackhawks won it in overtime, the series at the XL, they like just threw it in from center ice and it took a really weird carom off of the backboards and it went right to Patrick Kane. And he just buried it on us. Not to put salt in the wound there, but yeah. I don't remember it like it was yesterday or anything. It just happened.
I don't remember that one.
Karamgate. I'll send it to you after this. But yeah, that's super exciting. It's always fun when the Minnesota sports teams are the buzz of the town. And yesterday was one, or not, as we're recording this, Sunday the 14th was one of the few times that the Wild, the Wolves, and the Vikings all won on the same day. Um, that was pretty fun too. So, and the Vikes, number nine, who's now going by Nueve, he's him. I guess he's the guy again.
Wait, no way, Did you just make that up?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know how he goes by nine? He turns into nine when he's playing.
I've
There's
heard of
a there's a meme floating around the internet, and it's him with a big mustache, and then it says he now goes by Nueve.
it. Oh my god.
So I've been calling him Nueve. It's a
He's
nice
kind of
little
become
bit.
like make fun of like everyone kind of makes fun of him this year. I don't know. Hopefully he's taking it well.
The internet's gone crazy with him
Yeah,
of
like that
turning.
that meme of his like face in the locker room with that like mean mug face, cropping
Yeah,
other people's face in. Yeah, I don't even know where
shit.
that came from, but it's funny.
We deserve it. We've been asked this year, so we deserve it. Other than that, though, you've been out and about fishing on a couple local lakes. I went up to Red Lake. I wanted to do a little bit of a deep dive on early ice at Red Lake. That's a very popular early ice fishing scene around the state and really around the Midwest. Before I go into that, let's hear from you a little bit. If you can you name the lakes you've been going to, or do you want to keep it secret? And what kind of success have you had out and about?
No, I can name them. For the last handful of years, I've been doing a lot of Metro Lakes fishing because I don't know. I just have always wanted to find spots that are like you can go after work for a few hours, all of that, and have really done no long distance like fishing trips like your one that you just had in a while. I mean, I have, but nothing like specifically for fishing, ice fishing. We went on Wednesday, more or less to kind of check ice conditions and get out for the first time. On Wednesday, we went to Medicine Lake, which is out in Plymouth, and didn't catch fish. The ice was probably it was like 4 inches, good ice. Cut a spear hole. Check out the water clarity. Couldn't really see much at all. Very, very murky water. Um, and I don't know exactly what causes that. There's some science to it, I'm sure, but I think when we got that snow, a lot of every lake, even if it's got good ice, has cracks, and so I think when that snow sat on a lot of these ice sheets, it caused water to push up through those cracks, and I don't know if that kind of stirs up the at least shallower areas for if you want to do some sight fishing. So we kind of just made sure our gear was working and tested it out, and we have some new like live you were using it this weekend, the live scope. Testing that out, and kind of just did that for a few hours on Wednesday. So not much to report there. And then the next day, I went and checked out another lake in that same area called Parker's. And I had been out there once before a number of years ago. And kind of same thing. About 4 inches of ice. I had cut a spear hole again, very murky water, could barely see. I'm looking down, it's just kind of brown, murky, a lot of algae suspended. So I guess that's just the thing for this area, at least for now. And I'm trying to think, I don't think I caught a fish that day either. But just went out for a few hours, moved around a couple times, checked ice, checked to see if I could mark any fish. And then on Friday, we went out again and checked out Long Lake, which is just past Wayzata. And we were able to mark some fish. That time I didn't cut any spear holes or check clarity, but about the same amount of ice. Really wasn't much different, even though we've had this cold spell. This was Friday, maybe 4 or 5 inches again. And we did catch some crappies after dark out there. Nothing huge, but that was fun to just kind of get into some fish for the first time this year. So we kept some and threw some back, and spent a good amount of time out there after dark, which sometimes the fish shut off at that point. But I think for the crappie bite and walleye bite, you can sometimes still find them, and we did. And then went back to Long Lake and checked out Auburn Lake, which is out by Victoria, on Sunday. Kind of same thing out there in Victoria. Cut a hole and checked just to see what the water clarity was like, and it was just dirty. But caught some pike out there, just with some jigging shads, and but not a ton of action. Really all together so far this ice season, but been out a lot lately, and kind of finding all sorts of different ice. Like out in Victoria, the part it almost seemed like there was spots that had opened, like maybe it froze once and then reopened, because there was a lot of I was out there with a chisel, and I'd crack through maybe an inch, but then there'd be another 2 inches of water under that inch, and then 2 inches of ice underneath that. So that was a little sketchy. We actually didn't venture out too far on that lake. But then I'm hearing from friends and family that they're finding 8 inches, not even too far from here. So it's interesting how much of a variance we're seeing with that. But I got to figure now, with a full weekend of below zero weather for the most part, we're sitting a lot better.
That's crazy. You've been dedicated to the game. You've been out 4 times to 4 different lakes in the past less than a week. That's very
Well,
impressive. Get the
well,
use for that live scope. Make sure it was worth the purchase, because those are not cheap either. We went up to Red Lake this last weekend, early ice on Red Lake, walleye fishing. There's literally no other ice fishing like it. I bet the only thing comparable would be going up to Devil's Lake when the bite's good too, I would say is probably the only thing comparable. There was 12 and a half inches of ice up there. So that's a pretty big contrast compared to the metro area. This is also 4.5 hours basically straight north, but
Yep.
over a foot of ice, which I'm very thankful for because it was so cold this past weekend when we were up there, that second weekend in December. Checking my phone, it was basically below zero the entire weekend we were up there. And then at its coldest, Friday night going into Saturday, real temperature was negative 12. The wind chill was negative 30. It was mean and nasty. And why I'm thankful is the resort we went through, or the guide we went through, had put out his permanent houses on the ice because there was so much ice. So
Mm-hmm.
we were able to stay in a permanent fish house. Usually, and especially this time of year, there's not enough ice to put a permanent out on the water yet. So you're fishing in a hub or a portable, and they also let us drive our trucks out there. So we were have our trucks right on the ice, right next to the fish house, and we didn't have to take a sled or a side by side out there. So I was very thankful for having that much ice because it was brutally cold. I remember you're outside with you didn't have your gloves on, my fingers would go numb within 30 seconds. When you go outside to take a pee, your freaking crank is so shriveled and it gets so cold, and it's 10 seconds of exposure. So that was really the main theme of the trip. It was just absolutely brutally cold, and the heater these aren't ice castles by any stretch of the imagination. They're nice. They have bunk beds in them. There's a little stove, there's a little heater, but these aren't like the Taj Mahal ice houses like that were at the St. Paul ice. So these are pretty basic,
Yep.
and small propane heater in there, wall heater that's propane. That was not keeping up. We had to bring in a buddy heater and run that on high for 4 hours just to get the ice house to a temperature that was bearable, with not bearable but comfortable, in hoodies, hats, pants, and wool socks and long underwear, right? Where you didn't have to necessarily be in your jacket and snow pants. So that's how cold it was. I would say that impacted the bite a little bit, that nasty cold front, especially later in the weekend, Saturday into Sunday. The fish seemed to be much more lethargic, but it was still a great Red Lake trip. Like we caught, you catch 50 walleyes. Anytime you catch 50 walleyes over the course of a weekend, that's a fantastic weekend. So the bite was still good, but it was really, really cold. Same thing about the water clarity. It's interesting you say that. Even up there, we were in 8 to 9 feet of water, but it was still very murky. And I don't know the science behind that either. I'd always kind of thought if it's windy when the lakes freeze over, it takes a while for that water to settle. Uh, because there's ice over the top of it now. It takes a long time for that water to settle nice. And get good clarity. So it was pretty murky. So we were catching them. They really seem to like the glow jigs. The glow or UV in that
Mm-hmm.
murky water really seemed to be what they were after. In past years, they really liked the set lines, the dead sticks with the set line and a live middle. They like to get down there and hunt. That was not really the case this year. We saw much more action on the jigging with the minnow head, specifically the glows and the UVs with just
Maybe it's because of the low
treble.
visibility.
I do
Do you have
because
anything that like rattled? You know those little beads,
with the
little
weights in
buckshot.
them. Yeah, that's what they like. That's what they seem to like. The buckshot spoons with a
Yeah.
glow. And on Red Lake, they say they like the bright colors, the pinks and the purples with the glow has kind of been the ticket on there. That the Wonder Bread look. It's the white with the neon and the purple and the pink dot on it, and those might glow. And you might have a little buckshot weight action on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
This year, that seemed to be what they like. Last couple of years when we were up there this time of year, they loved the set lines. It seemed like they wanted to go hunt live bait, and the set lines were going crazy, and we couldn't catch a thing on the jigging. Exact opposite this year. The rattles barely went off during the night, And then during the day, we had the down imaging set up on the live scope too. We would watch them swim right by the live bait and go hit them wherever we were jigging.
Did you have like a minnow head on, or were you just doing bare hooks?
No minnow head. We always do minnow head. They didn't go on any bear hooks. We really didn't have bear hooks down either, unless we lost our bait. So minnow head's definitely the ticket there. We should shout them out. There's a bait shop out of Bemidji's called Trappy's. Old school guy, has his own minnow net set up in the river. Does it all himself. Old timer, only takes cash. Long gray hair, beard down to his bound to his nipples, broken, up north country boy through and through, but he has the best bait. Not one minnow died in the minnow bucket the entire weekend, and they were all lively and ready to rock. So shout out to Trappies right outside of Bemidji. If you ever need bait and you're going up to that neck of the woods, whether you're going to Winnie, a little bit of a drive from Leech, but if you're ever in that area, go hit up Trappy's bait. He's got the ticket there for your live bait.
What is it
Catch.
that makes Red Lake like the early ice spot? I never understood that.
I don't really know either. It's just known for, well, I should say this. It's known for being one of the first lakes to freeze over enough to where you can get out and fish on it. So it's known for being one of the first lakes in the state, especially good fishery lakes, that freezes over. So it's all those diehard ice fishermen. It's their first opportunity to get out there with all of their gear. It's one of those first lakes in the state. I attribute that to it's a really shallow lake. Like the bottom of that lake is this sand bowl. I don't even know if it's over 20 feet deep, kind of in its deepest. It's very shallow all the way through. We were fishing in 8 to 9 feet of water. And if you're ever out past 11 or 12, they very rarely bite. So it's known for being one of the first lakes to freeze over. That is a really good fishery for walleye. And it's a weird lake in the sense of it's been known for different fish at different times. Back in the day, Red Lake was known for jumbo perch and massive crappies. That's gone away. You still catch the huge crappies and the jumbo perch once in a while, but now it's known for the walleye bite. And I don't really know why that lake. You have to remember lower red and 3/4 of upper red are on the reservation. So we can't even fish there without a guide. And they do a lot of farming for walleye on lower red. The Red Lake Reservation does a ton of farming and selling that fish to restaurants and grocery stores around the state. So there's a huge walleye population there. But to answer your question, I don't know why walleye. I know it's known as the early ice spot in the Midwest, that and Devil's Lake, like I referenced in the open. That's more so because it's the first lake to freeze over with good ice that you can take a side by side out on and go do some fishing. But I don't know how the walleye population ended up being so good there all of a sudden over the last 10 years.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if it's one of the first bigger good fishery lakes to freeze over, like that's where you plan your trips to. I can see that. Like Lake of the Woods is kind of a lot further, so this is like more of, I guess you could say, a reasonable trip distance. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I still have yet to still have yet to check that out, but makes you think because like I'm always thinking through like trying to learn more, and I'll never learn it all, and I'm nowhere near even close to that now. But like learn about more of the like reasons why behind all this stuff, and it's just crazy how like finicky fish can be, and how different things can be, and how things can pressure them differently. And the murky water makes me think of I grew up along the Crow River, and like that's always murky, muddy water, and like those ice fishing in that area was always like you have to have something that rattles, so your buckshots, and then normally the bite was a little bit better after dark, so we're always glowing them up. and that helps those fish that are swimming in this low visibility water to locate your bait, and whether it's the minnow head with the smell, it's the UV or the glow with the sight, or the rattle with the sound. You kind of hit all three when you have that presentation, and um, yeah, it's interesting. I wonder, like, if you remember, like last year, was the water relatively clear? Is that like a theory now? If it's
It was
clear water,
more
your set lines are a little bit more effective.
it was more clear last year than it was this year.
Like, could you
But
see the bottom last year?
no.
You couldn't. Okay. Were you set up in 8 feet?
Last year we were a little deeper. We go to there's a rock reef. They call it a rock reef. It's just like a big huge pile of rocks.
Yep.
We usually go fish right off that on some brake lines, but you have to drive out there with a side by side and put set up a portable. The weather wasn't going to let us do that this year. It was just way too cold and way too windy. It wasn't going to make sense to try to go over there. Maybe it would have been different. Maybe we would have had a little more success. There was also a big crack that opened up in that direction. That's pretty common on Red Lake for whatever reason, even when it's this cold, for cracks to open up as the ice sheets freeze and kind of push together in different areas. So
Yeah.
the day before we got there, a side by side went through the ice between where the landing we go on through the resort, between there and this rock reef that we like to fish. A crack had opened up and a side by side had gone through. So the
Every
resort
year.
owner Yep. The resort owner had to pull him out like right before we got there. So he was pretty adamant, like, don't even go over there. Don't even fuck with it. Go, if you're gonna go, you have to drive along shore, go all the way down and around and back up. And we didn't want to stick around with how nasty it was outside. And it's funny because he told us that. And then later that day, it was really windy, so they were plowing a lot, plowing roads and then plowing around their houses to push away the drifts because the drifts were really starting to get pretty big in some spots. And while he was out plowing around our house, a car was driving trying to go to this reef. It's a pretty well known area. So this car was like trying to drive there right after the resort owner said, don't go over there. And the resort owner like flew over there and we could see out the window he's like screaming at this guy to turn his car around or he was about to go through the ice again. Um, but we usually go fish there. It's usually a little deeper, maybe 10 feet of water on those breaks by this rock reef.
Mhm.
But it's been murky, not as murky as this year. Um, but yeah, that's typically where we would go set up. We were really at the mercy of wherever they put this fish house because we weren't gonna try to venture out. It was just too freaking nasty. And there was this we when we were driving in to go clean fish, there was a guy in a side by side and he we saw him slip and fall on the ice and fall on his ass. So we had stopped to just to kind of check on him. And he was in a side by side, but it didn't have doors on it, so he was open to the wind and the cold and the elements. And he was turned around. The cold just makes your brain squirrely, if that makes sense. So this guy we stopped and talked to, he was turned around and he didn't know where the landing was. And we were like, "Whoa, dude, what?" And because you could still see shore where we were, so you could be oriented a little bit.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but it was so windy and blowing snow so much, I could see how you could become disoriented. But this guy didn't know where the landing was to get back, and he was out in the frickin' elements by himself. Excuse me. So we had to like we were like, well, dude, we're going to the landing right now. You can just follow our truck. But had we not been there and done that, I'm kind of starting to think, dude, where would you have gone? Maybe he would have just tried to drive directly to shore because that's the only thing you could see. I should say this up there. Um, the resorts and the landings, especially the ones managed by resorts, they have beacons kind of like a lighthouse. They have super bright flashing beacons. so you can see them from way far out on the ice to help orient you a little bit. This year was a little different with how much wind was swirling snow. You couldn't see them. Typically, you can see that from a few miles away fishing on a big body of water like this. That's different than really any other lake I've been on. I've been on Mille Lacs ice fishing out of a resort. They do something similar. That's one nice thing that all of these resorts do is if you go through their landing, they plow a road and then they have the road staked out and then they have a beacon. So for wherever you are, you can kind of orient yourself a little bit to the resort. But you couldn't see that this year. So this guy was, I could see in his eyes like fear. I don't know if it was fear, bewilderment. His brain was going swirly. So thankfully, we watched him fall on his ass. So we pulled up to make sure he was good. And then he followed us in. Because the other nice thing about the trip, right? You have your limit. The limit is 3 fish under 17 inches. And then you can keep 1 fish over 17 inches per person. Pretty much everything we caught was 17 to 20 inches. Caught like 50 fish in that area. It's 16 to 20, right? Where you can keep the unders. So we caught a couple. Largest we caught was 22 and a half probably. So nothing like crazy, crazy big to write home about. All of the fish right in that sort of slot area. The nice thing is up there, the resorts, specifically JR is where it was kind of where we'll hang out. Shout out to JR's Corner Access up there. They have a cleaning room in the resort, which is I'm calling it a resort. It's just a bar, right? Where you check in, and then they have some places where you can park your houses on shore and you can rent houses from them. So inside the bar, they have a fish cleaning room. Pretty common for a fishing resort type area. The fun part is you go in there and you clean your walleye, then you go to the other end into the bar with your bag of walleye, you give it to the bartender and they'll fry you up a fish basket right there. So that's always a lot of fun. And the bar's packed. Everyone's doing the fish fry after they clean their fish and telling their war stories from the day. That's really like one of the most fun things to do up there at the resorts is go clean your fish in their cleaning room and then give your fish to the bartender and they'll bring it in the back and fry it up and get you a fish fry and a huge fish basket up there. So that's a lot of fun. And I don't know why I take note of this. We went to JR's, did that on Friday night. Then for Saturday, we went to breakfast at another popular place up there called Westwind Resort. Both times, the bars were packed with at least 50 people in each spot. No chicks, all dudes. The only chicks were the couple of bartenders that were working. Everyone
Yeah.
else it was the boys up there, and everyone's like going around to the other tables, telling their war stories of the day. Oh, how'd you do? Where were you? How deep were you? What were you using? What were they biting on? Everybody's like a little sheepish and talks in very roundabout terms of exactly where they were and how deep it was and exactly what they were using to get them to bite. I just love the classic can't give your fishing spots away game.
That's crazy. Yeah. What a sight. I bet that is. Just everybody's up there for the same reasons. So, that's cool. That's cool. I haven't done anything like that. But what would you say was I know you said historically or like the general consensus is like bright colors, but what was like the jig of choice this year? I know you said they liked the glow, but was it pink again or what was kind of the strategy?
Different guys. We had 5 guys in the house we were fishing in.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much had 4 set lines down and then 4 or 5 jigging holes. Everyone jigging was using something a little bit different, but the consensus is a buckshot spoon and then either a UV or glow. To me, they're kind of the same thing, but the UV you don't necessarily need to glow. And when I say glow, your Vexlar will have an attachment where you can it's like a UV glow light essentially. You hold your lure under that light, and it charges, for lack of a better word, and then you put that down, and then it's bright in the water. So the buckshot spoon on a treble hook, uh, whether it's a red hook or regular, I didn't think mattered too much. And then the color scheme was that Wonder Bread look, if you know what I'm talking about. It's white, and then it has
Oh yeah, I have a bunch
it.
of Wonder Bread stuff.
Yeah, so the Wonder Bread with the dots, and then the dots will be your glow or your UV. And then I really liked a light purple, seemed to be the trick for me. That was a glow, but it's just a buckshot spoon, essentially, was with a treble hook on it. The treble hooks, I always say, are clutch up there. The set lines, we had a mix of a regular hook and treble hook. Seemed like a lot of them got off on a regular hook on the set line, and we had really good success anytime it was a treble hook, and they didn't seem to be too picky whether they were going after the single hook or the three hook. So,
Yeah.
um, but the pinks, the purples, and then the Wonder Bread are usually the colors of choice that people like up there. And then a lot of people will say red or pink hooks too. I don't really take too much stock on that and the hook color. I think anything is really fine, especially when the bite's on. Like you could stick a freaking beer can down there and they would bite at it when the bite's hot. So, but that was yeah, that's really what we were using. Um, didn't set up any tip ups or anything. Our buddy was showing us this thing that he bought that keeps a tip up hole warm, where literally it's a round piece of plastic that you put hand warmers in it. You crack hand warmers and put it in it, and then you set that in the hole and you set your tip up over it, and it's supposed to stop the tip up hole from freezing and allow you to fish. And on the packaging it said it was good down to negative 18 degrees, and that was basically how cold it is. So we were trying to convince him to go set up a couple tip ups outside so we could see if it worked, but he kind of chickened out and didn't want to do it. It was too freaking cold to get out there. I don't think anything would have worked.
I was looking at tip ups at the ice show. It's crazy how many variations of those there are. Now there's these. I think Minnesota might have legalized at least an adaptation of it, where like you can use your ice fishing rod in some kind of tip up method. But there's rules on it. Like I don't think you can use. Some states have it where like you can use one that actually has a built-in like set system. So when it triggers, your rod will actually like set the hook. I want to say Minnesota does. That's not legal. You just have to have like an open bail so that the fish can just take open line. But just crazy how many different ones there are. And I haven't. I have like a crappy one. I think it's like the Fraybill orange one. You've probably seen them before, but there's so many like I've never heard of the hand warmer one. I saw one the other day where you like have a box and you light a candle inside the box, and like that's supposed to be your warmth to just barely have enough in there to keep that hole from freezing over. Just weird stuff.
So one of the guys we were with, he's an ice fishing gear nut. This is the guy that has the hand warmer thing. He was showing me he paid for an app, a tip up app, that you set your tip up and the line has a sensor on it that's connected to your app. And so when the line goes or when it tips up, your phone starts ringing. And so you get a ring on your phone that indicates your tip up is up and that you can go out and check it.
Sheesh.
That and I saw at the ice show, right when you come down the stairs, right by where Otter had their setup at the bottom of those escalators, there was a guy that had a stand, and it was kind of cool. It was a beacon light, so it
Yeah.
was a traditional tip up setup, and then once the fish took the line, it connected two things of connectivity, and so then it set off a beacon to alert you that your tip up was going. But yeah, they sell apps that you have to pay for that are like tip up apps that And this guy had a couple of them. So we were trying to convince him, like, all right, well, go drill a hole, go set your hand warmer heater in the hole, and go set up one of your tip up
Yeah, why
apps so
not?
we can see this thing in motion. We got nothing else going on. We're just sitting in this house freezing. It was, in his defense, it was that unbearably cold out. It was dangerously cold. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Wind River with Jeremy Renner, but the premise is these people are working on an oil rig in rural Wyoming, Montana area, and it's cold, and there's kind of a break in, and one of the people runs out, and they just run through the mountains, but then they freeze to death. And the movie, they're talking about how cold it was and how far she made it before her lungs collapsed, basically. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what I was thinking about. Like, it's so cold. Even in my gear, if I didn't have a place to get into, how far could I walk before I just like froze? It was brutal cold. So I get why he didn't want to go out and try and drill a hole and get all of this set up in this negative 30 degree temp. But I'll tell you this, we saw people walking from shore because they let us drive our half-ton vehicles out because we were renting a house from the guide. So they let us park our vehicles out there, but everyone else they weren't quite allowing vehicles out, and they weren't allowing permanents out. You could bring a side by side or smaller and pull your hub out. Well, since they didn't allow vehicles, there was still some people walking from shore a mile, mile and a half, 2 miles to set up a portable in that cold. Like, these people go crazy over ice fishing. Oh, and then I should say this too. In JRs, you always see one or two people and then one or two people that are like uh, fishing YouTubers essentially.
Okay.
So in years past, we've seen the guy that has a pretty popular Minnesota YouTube fishing channel called Fishing More. If you've ever heard of him,
No, I don't think so.
he's a pretty popular guy because the group we were with, two people in the group immediately recognized him. That was 2 years ago. Last year we saw Lindor, Lindor, Nick Lindor, I think his name is. He's got a popular show too, so they're always out and about, especially for that early ice time. It's the time of year to be on Red Lake, so kind of everyone's up there. There was plenty of trucks, so they'll let you park your vehicle on the ice right along shore and then put your fish house right along shore, but they won't let you drive it out yet because there's not enough ice. There was a handful of vehicles that wouldn't start Saturday when we were driving by and coming to shore. So thankful that the Chevy Heavy, old reliable, fired right up, man, put that thing to the test in that cold and in that wind, fired right up, and the heat was cooking. 10 minutes of warmed up, and it was hot in there. You had to be in a sweatshirt. So that was fantastic.
I had a fishing trip at Winnebagosh a number of years ago where a guy was so afraid of his truck not starting that he kept his truck running the entire trip. 3 days, had his truck running all night, never turned it off, just for fear um of not being able to get started up. He had a wife that was expecting, and so he didn't want to take that risk of having a stalled out vehicle. That was I want to say it was New Year's 2019, 18, and it was 30 below, not wind chill, but regular temps. And driving out to my spear house, my beer I had a case of beer can started exploding. It was like there was
On the
like
dr-
gunshots going off in my truck bed.
Dude, that's crazy. On a 10-minute drive out to the house.
Yeah, well, I mean, my mistake was I left them in there overnight. But once I like started like I don't know if it was just kind of getting a little shaking going on. Boom, 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 boom. It's like, oh, so I think of that now when you get to those level of temps that like yeah, your beer can freeze, but not only that, it can explode. So yeah, it's like just crazy, but I don't know. The things we do to go out and catch fish, pretty crazy.
Yeah, the fish house was very crowded because, like you're saying, everything had to come in the fish house. You couldn't leave anything in your vehicle or outside. Typically, you would just leave a case of beer right outside and grab one out of the snow or whatever when it was time. But anything had to be inside. Same thing with your electronics. You couldn't leave anything sitting in your vehicle overnight because it wasn't going to work the next day. I'll
Yeah.
say little bit of a pro tip, especially when it was windy like that. The front of your vehicle should be not be facing into the wind. You don't want that wind howling into your engine compartment overnight because that's when that shit's going to freeze up. And I'll say when we went to shore, the vehicles that wouldn't start, granted it was maybe 3 or 4 trucks, all of them a little bit older. All of them had the engine blocks facing the lake, which the wind was howling towards shore.
Right through
Um,
them.
it,
Yeah.
and you could just see because and it was blowing a lot of snow too, so you could see where the snow had been blowing on the vehicles, and so they were just frozen over with snow and ice. And then they had chargers on them all day, and even when I left, a couple of them still weren't running.
Yeah. Did anybody try and set up like a hub house? I know not your group, but
Yeah,
other
there was
folks.
others. There was a
The
handful,
hardest
not
thing to
like
do
it.
in the wind. To set up a hub house in the wind. I mean, those things catch the wind, right? Oh, they're like a parachute.
Yep. I will say nothing like it's been in years past.
Yeah.
But there was still people up there. You could tell the people that were setting those up, at least the ones we saw, really knew what they were doing. Like it was like I just said about the vehicle orientation. So you park your truck to try to block the wind the best you can, and then you tie the hub to the truck so that like when you set it up it's tied to the truck, and then the truck is blocking the wind at least a little bit the best you can, or you're side by side whatever they're going to allow out. And then thankfully there was enough snow on the lake where you could do a good job banking those hubs. You can't do a great job, but you can a little bit, throw snow on the outside and then weigh them down a little bit and then anchor it to your vehicle, and then, anchor it the other side if you have it, drill them into the ice with the anchors. But that people did it. There wasn't a lot. Like usually when you're up there, it's just a sea of hubs,
I
literally
bet.
for miles in every direction as far as you can see, a sea of hubs. This year it was all small permanents that you could slide out that were really light, or more than a handful, but not a ton of pop-ups out there.
Yeah.
So
That's what I meant by hubs. Yeah, pop outs. Yeah. Yeah. Those I Jordan and I were setting one up on Long Lake the other night and I I wouldn't say I don't know what I'm doing, but like I was trying to like we couldn't drive out there, so I didn't have any way to break the wind. So like trying to keep the house like low to the ice, trying not to get it up, where it could catch wind. Um, but before I could get it, because I was just trying to get open far enough so that I could anchor one corner down with one of them ice anchors. But we got the wind just right, and I was standing next to my sled, so I got ass over tea kettle, and Jordan blew over too. But thankfully both of us held on to the hub. I mean, we only had one side popped out, so it's not like it was fully expanded. But it must have just got hit perfectly, and we were angled just right with that wind, but knocked us both over. Thankfully, it was dark out, and there wasn't anybody in their house videotaping us, because I'm sure that would have gone on one of those Facebook groups. Look at these idiots out trying to set up their hub house. It was funny because we were both just laughing because I don't know. I felt like we didn't even do anything wrong, but battled.
hey, shit happens when you party. That's gonna be we talked about all of the new and improved inventions they have to have every year. That's gonna be the next thing for technology, is a new way to help set up your house or do your bump outs when it's super windy. I'm guarantee we'll see something in the next couple of years. I know they did the anchors a few years ago. The next thing will be like for when you're actually trying to bump it out, how's it gonna weigh it down?
Right, because we had like a very specific spot that we had kind of scoped out with a live scope. Like we want to be here it's windy, it's cold. Like we're not really willing to go out and test out other areas. So we're like, we know there's fish here. So like trying to strategically get it there. We're like, okay, the hole's in a corner. We want to have the dogs in there, have room for all this crap inside, and then like try and get it anchored down in the perfect spot. So we're like kind of shuffling around, and that's when we got blown over on our asses. And yeah, so it's like I don't know what else you could do. I mean, I've watched when I bought the house. I watched a couple YouTube videos on how to like properly set it up, just because I wanted to know what I was doing, and that's what you got to do. You got to keep it low to the ice and get it anchored down as soon as possible, at least one corner, and keep your door away from the wind on the downwind side, and all these little tricks. But every year you see those videos of somebody's hub house just blowing across the lake, and I always laugh at those. It actually happened at the pond hockey tournament last year because it was so cold. People were setting up some of those houses, and mid-game we just see one going like a tumbleweed across Nokomis.
Dude, that's awesome. I love watching fishing blooper reels on YouTube. We were talking about that a bunch this weekend. The guy, the OG that always wears the Tennessee hat, the old timer, is from the 80s probably or the 70s, where he's always like breaking his rod tips or falling out of the boat. I love that stuff.
People spinning on their augers and falling through the ice.
All right, bro. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap. Wish me luck. I'm headed down to Shields to finish up my Christmas shopping, so we'll be battling with everyone else doing their last minute shopping. But that's all we got for today, everyone. We hope between now and next time you get a chance to get outside and adventure. Bye, everybody.